Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this latest breakfast session. Thanks for all coming along this morning. Always great to see you bright and early, wherever you happen to be. We're delighted this morning to have two AUT award winners for the programs that enhance learning. We have Associate Professor David Hobbs and Dr. Thomas Vincent, both from Flinders University. So they're in the same city as me for a change. So we're on the same timeline. So that's great. Great to see you, David and Thomas. So they're going to speak to us today about work integrated learning. And this is something that's been quite popular this year. And it's really getting a lot of traction. It's really growing in popularity and becoming really mainstreamed in the university. So these award-winning practitioners are here to talk to us about work integrated learning. So as we start, before I hand over the reins to my colleagues, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm hosting this session from the traditional lands of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. Also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands that you're joining us from today and acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islands people who are attending today. So a couple of quick housekeeping items. There is a chat window, so obviously you're encouraged to chat and connect with your colleagues during the session. And there's also a Q&A window. So if you have questions for our presenters, please post them in the Q&A window and then we'll get to them at the end of the session. And I'll ask you to directly ask those questions. So I'll just hand over I will stop sharing and I'll hand over to, sorry, everybody. I'll hand over to David and Thomas. Thanks for being there, guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Stuart. Just checking you can see our slides okay?
Yeah, we can see your slides really well and we can hear you very clearly.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
First of all, Thomas and I would just like to thank yourself, Stuart, and the team from both UniSA and RMIT for inviting us here today. It's a privilege to be asked to speak to this group. We look forward to delivering our material today and also to taking questions later on. So thank you very much for your organising and helping as well.
Not a problem, our pleasure.
All right, and just to get started, we've had this from Stuart, but Tom and I would just like to acknowledge we are on Kaurna Yata today here at our Tonsley campus, here at Flinders University, and we do respect and recognise and acknowledge the connection that Indigenous people have with both the land and the waterways here, and we are in a beautiful, beautiful area of the plains of Adelaide, so it's great to welcome you all here today, so thank you. Now, in terms of moving forward, what we're going to talk about today, we thought we'd give you some background to our program so you understand what we do and how we do it. Talk about Engineers Australia accreditation. Tom and I are both engineers. I'm a biomedical engineer. Tom's a civil engineer. Don't worry, it's not going to be dry and boring. We hopefully have made it un-engineering-like in that respect. But we do work in a professional requirement area. So you'll hear about what that means for us and our degrees. We'll talk about what's unique about Flinders and the Work Integrated Learning Program here. Talk about the student and industry feedback we collect through the different surveys that we run, and then pass on some general advice for AAUT applications down the track if you're considering putting one forward. And then, of course, have lots of Q&A as well. So when I usually give my research presentations, I say that research is a team sport. So I would like to begin by saying that, well, everything we do here in Work Integrated Learning is a team sport. And Tom and I are just two of the representatives for the award that we received earlier this year for the Work Integrated Learning Program. And just to acknowledge our amazing team. So Tom and myself are what we call the academic coordinators for the program, and Blake has been a past academic coordinator for the Work Integrated Learning Program. And then our amazing team that we have here, so Larissa, Jess, Sasha, Nalini, and Colleen. You'll get to hear about some of these people, particularly Sasha and the role that she performs in our presentation. But just acknowledging that we're our team, it's been fantastic to work side by side, and we will take questions on this later on if you have any. So from a historical perspective, we tried to sort of lay the scene, set the scene down in terms of what work integrated learning was like here at Flinders University. And it began in the early 90s when Flinders actually started teaching engineering. So we're not an old engineering school. We've been here for just over 30 years. And so when we have our engineering program, we had to have a work integrated learning component built into that. And so the dean at the time, Professor Andrew Downing, who set up and established the school, said that the Flinders way would be to actually immerse and embed our students for a full semester, so for 20 weeks or 5 months, with an industry partner where it's full credit and it can be anywhere. And that really laid the road for what we, Tom and I and others now work with and lead since that date. So I was a student here at Flinders University. I was lucky enough to undertake my 5-month work integrated learning program in Toronto in Canada. And we have students who are all over the world at the moment, as well as locally and nationally. So it's a fantastic immersive experience with our industry partners. What this has meant, though, has been that the success, should I say, or the way that engineering has delivered work integrated learning means that we've successfully been able to roll out the program across our whole college, which is the College of Science and Engineering. And we'll touch on this and show you what this means and how this works in some of our other discipline areas. Now, interestingly, my first degree was actually in physics. So I did a Bachelor of Science in Physics. So I kind of understand the BSc or the science way of how degrees are structured and work, and how I did not have a work integrated learning program opportunity during my first degree. It wasn't until I did engineering that I began to understand what a professional degree looked like, what a work integrated learning program looked like, and how that was working. So you'll see how we've spread it across the whole college and had talks to other people in other colleges and how it's gone further as well. So this is where it gets a little bit dry, so I apologise, but we are engineers. We work in a framework. Engineers Australia is our accrediting body. You're probably familiar with hearing things on the radio and in the press with the AMA for medical degrees and the CPA for accounting, but Engineers Australia is the body in Australia which represents all engineers. Very different to other countries like the US and the UK, where they have specific associations, but per discipline. So the IEEE for electrical engineers just looks after electrical engineers. Engineers Australia is the home for everyone, regardless of your discipline. And they run an accreditation program. So you cannot call yourself a School of Engineering or a Department of Engineering or run an engineering program if it hasn't been accredited by Engineers Australia, because your graduates will not be recognised as engineers. And if you jump on their website, this is the official page, and if you click through to what it actually means, you'll see that it's part of what's called the Washington Accord. And breaking it right down to the key components, the Washington Accord effectively is an accord which a number of countries around the world have all signed up to say that if we have met this minimum benchmark, then we will recognise engineering qualifications and hence engineers if they come from Australia from an accredited program to go into a Canadian or American or Singaporean or UK institution or industry, because we recognise the base level benchmark of your qualification. So the benchmarking and standardisation process is a key component of what Engineers Australia does. And Tom and I both happen to be on the other side, where we've been accreditors for other universities going through the accreditation process as well. That means that Engineers Australia actually publishes a document online, which you may even see your university listed in this screenshot we've taken here. So this is the official document EA publishes every year as of this month. And you can see that we're actually coming up for our re-accreditation, which is every 3 or 4 years, next year in April, May. So it's not a one-off and you're done. It's a rolling process. The panels change and they come back every cycle. And every cycle, they make sure that you're still maintaining that minimum benchmark, so that an engineer graduating from, say, Monash University is at the same level and benchmark to an engineer from Flinders or Edith Cowan or Deakin and so on. So this is an open document, publicly accessible, and you can see how and where each engineering degree is accredited around the country. As part of that framework, though, there's a document which everything sort of comes back to, and that's called the Accreditation Criteria User Guide. And what this effectively says is how we need to teach or framework all of our topics, degree programs, subjects, etc. Specifically in what we do, it's called Engagement with Professional Practice, or EPP. So Engineers Australia recommends that if you're graduating an engineer at the professional level, which is a 4-year degree, and I'll show you how our degree is structured, and it's very similar to other universities as well. It says you have to have an equivalent of 60 days or 12 weeks delivered in environments, be they simulated, virtual, industry, or a mix, that provide the experiential learning. And then for the accreditation process, this needs to be documented. So there's obviously lots of ways to do that. The idea being that the overall EPP experiences should enhance a graduate's capacity to move with ease into the professional workplace. So giving them an opportunity to taste the environment, to know what it's like to go into professional practice and to experience that while they're still a cadet or a student, if that makes sense. And that comes directly, as you can see, quoted from the documentation that accreditors have to lean on and universities have to abide by. So what does that mean for what universities do? So we've recently pulled together this work, which is about to be submitted and published for an upcoming conference in engineering education. And Tom led this work where he examined all of the different websites for every university in Australia, which says that we do work integrated learning and how they do it based on what their information on their website says. Now that's key because the information on your website is what students and other people interested in your programs, people wanting to know about what's going on, learn and understand about how you deliver your work integrated learning. And that little 3% sliver up here is actually Flinders University being the only one in the whole country at the undergraduate level that delivers a 5-month immersive program for our students. And you can see it's quite varied as to what other universities do, be it 60 days, 50, 40, 30, or whether it's not actually clear based on how their subjects are listed on the website for what the engineering programs offer. We know of one university in Australia who does something like 100 days and 5 months, but that's at the postgraduate level for one of their awards, but at the undergraduate level, Flinders is quite unique in terms of what it offers. So what do we do and how do we do it? So we wrap our work integrated learning topic, or we call them topics here instead of subjects, together with what we call a preparation topic and then a project management topic as well. And we deliver the material to our students with a professional services team, and you saw most of them acknowledged on that title slide with all of our faces, so that we basically scaffold and increase our students' understanding of professionalism in the workplace, what it means to be an engineer in the workplace, and how they're going to actually day-to-day undertake their activities while they're there. While on their placement, every single student who goes out from Flinders University from our college has both an industry supervisor, so someone in the workplace they can see on a day-to-day basis. They're always connected to an academic supervisor. So Tom has a number of students now. I've got a number of students now who I'm the academic supervisor for. I think I've got one in Singapore, one in Sweden, and one locally just down the road. And then we have the WIL team, which is there to support students if they need extra support during their placement. So the key takeaway message here is that we don't sort of parachute a student into an environment where they spend 5 months. They're connected or tethered through their academic supervisor for assistance, guidance, technical inquiries, and other. They're still connected to the university through the WIL team. And if there's university resources they'd like to use, such as our makerspace, our laser cutters, our 3D printers and things like that, they can, if they're still based here in Adelaide, come back to the campus, use those, then go back to the workplace. One of the things that Tom and I have been very keen to do is make sure that our assessments can float across what is now a very mixed cohort. And I'll explain and unpack some of that. So it's not just engineers that we're dealing with now, and it's not just civil or electrical or mechanical or biomedical. It's chemists and biologists and physicists and mathematicians, computer scientists who are going out into the workplace to make sure our assessments are still appropriate for those students as well. Okay, so if you've never seen or looked at an engineering degree, and I hadn't before I started, like I said, physics was my background, most universities in Australia adopt a 4-year model. It's a minimum 4-year compulsory honours model, where the first year is really just what we call a common first year. And this is where our students become lifted up with the mathematics. We need them to understand some electronics, design, programming, and professional skills across the board. So they can do a common first year, regardless of them nominating that they're coming in and doing, say, a biomedical or electrical or civil. That common first year means that if you'd like to change because you think maybe mechanical is better than biomedical, or vice versa, you can, because the common first year is there. After that, though, things start to become a bit more pathway oriented, depending on the discipline that you've specifically chosen. So you can see here in year 2 and then the beginning of year 3, we actually start to deliver that very specific content that Engineers Australia says we have to if this person's going to come out with a designation. So Bachelor of Engineering Honours Biomedical. Well, where's the biomedical content coming from? And we reinforce that in 3rd year before with the semester 6. we send them out for a whole semester to do their work placement. They then come back and do compulsory honours. That was new for me, coming from a science background where honours was optional or by invite only after you finish your 3-year bachelor's. In an engineering degree, it's compulsory. You do capstones and electives, and then you do your honours project for the year and you finish and graduate. So 8 semesters or 4 years. What we are finding more and more, though, is that because our students are immersed in industry for 5 months, doing their work integrated learning program, doing day-to-day activities that we expect an engineer to do, maybe on a research project, maybe on an operations project, maybe a combination, sometimes more than 2 or 3 projects in day-to-day activities, we find that they identify or their supervisors do a project that can then come forward for their honours year. So we call this the WIL honours coupling. It happens quite often. I've got a number of students on placement now who are probably going to bring that project or part of it through to their honours year next year. And it means that industry engagement goes from not 5, but more like 18 months, which is a much longer connection and opportunity for the students to really understand how industry works. So we see that quite a bit. Okay, I talked a couple of slides ago about how we deliver it and what the program looks like, but I'm a picture person rather than a text person. So how this looks is the semester before we send our students abroad, we do a topic called workplace preparation. And in this topic, we actually give them a lot of information about what it means to be a student going into the workplace. We host networking events. We have panels of both industry and students or past students. We talk about expectations, and we give this to them the whole semester beforehand to sort of plant the seeds and make sure they're well aware of what they need to do and how they do it. And you'll see with the red text there that we actually conduct a survey, and we'll give you some of the results of those surveys. So one we call a warm-up survey. So effectively either week 0 or week 1 in this semester, when we see them, we put a survey out there, asking them a few questions, and then we hold a cool-down survey after that first session to sort of get an indication of how those responses might have changed. And then we wrap up that and off they go. What that looks like is when they get to that 6th semester, the second semester of their 3rd year, they do an intensive project management topic, which only lasts about 4.5 weeks, and they go on their work placement. So any students who would be going abroad, like the students who go to Singapore, that placement starts in late July, finishes in August, and then they start on the first Monday in September, and off they go, and they come back before next year begins. If they're international students, they do it either ahead of time or they do it in this compressed mode and then they go. But whether they're domestic, whether they go outside of South Australia, they must undertake this project management topic, because the project management tools that we teach them about, how to structure a project, how to deliver a project, how to look at the risks for a project, how to actually look at how you can Gantt chart the project out from start to finish, looking at key milestones, budgets, restraints, resources. These are key things we want them, and industry wants us to teach our students. They can then deliver on them when they actually go onto placement. You'll see down the right-hand side of this figure too, again, we do some more surveys. So at the end, we do a student survey and an industry survey, and Tom will deliver some of that information later on. And we make sure that they're, like I said, always in contact with their academic supervisor should they need extra help or support throughout their placement. Now, one of the things I'm talking about here is in the middle section, it says a legal agreement. Get the mouse working. A legal agreement and a work plan being signed here. I'll give you an example of what a work plan is. And the legal agreement is a document that the university requires our students to have before they go on placement, which really articulates if they're being paid on placement or if they're not being paid, and what that means from an insurance perspective. That one there. Okay, I mentioned Sasha before. So Sasha is someone who we highlight to our students in the very first week when we do the workplace preparation in semester 1. And the key thing with Sasha is she works for USAP across Flinders and other universities. She's an amazing individual, a fantastic person, a great resource for students who may struggle with what we call here at Flinders, say a disability action plan or some sort of accommodation that requires some adjustment around their learning styles, to be able to assist and help and facilitate our students to go into the workplace. So coming from what is a very potentially safe environment, one they're very familiar with because they've been with us for 2.5, 3, sometimes longer years, to go into a workplace where there might be some stresses, anxiety. And Sasha has been terrific with a number of our students from the application stage all the way through to the interview stage, to having touch points with students and industries and supervisors when the student's on placement, talking about relevant accommodations, making sure the industry provider knows that if someone has some anxiety, and it's diagnosed and it's in the disability action plan that can be accommodated for, what some workday accommodations might look like. And we talk about Sasha in the first class. She has one-on-one sessions with students if they'd like to meet with Sasha. We put the information there so that if students would like to, they can actually just reach out to Sasha, and it's not something which then gets told or spread through the whole class. It's something they can chase up in their own time to make sure they've got the right supports. In the background, I actually sit on the University Disability Advisory Committee, so I can help facilitate some of those conversations and connections to Sasha if students would like to come and find out what support they can have as well. We also direct our students to Flinders University's Career Hub. You can see on the right-hand side. And during our sessions, we talk about things like, how to make a killer resume, how to ace the interview, how to do an appropriate follow-up if you sent out an application and haven't heard things back. So again, some of that professionalism around helping our students go from being students or cadets to being a professional in the workplace. I mentioned earlier that our students can go anywhere. So in that preparation class that we run in the very early part of the semester, this slide is effectively taken directly from how we promote opportunities overseas. And so we've been fortunate enough since 2016 to receive ongoing and continuous New Colombo Plan, or NCP funding from DFAT, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And so we can send students into Southeast Asia. Our longest partner there is Nanyang Polytechnic, or NYP, in Singapore. Actually, I'll be going there in a week and a half to check in on the students and make sure they're okay. And we're going to be extending this out, so not only Singapore, but also South Korea and Malaysia, and offering opportunities to our students. So it's a competitive process. We have a call for EOIs. We ask students to put that in. So they have to put in a cover letter, a resume, have a one-pager responding to why they'd like to go to Singapore, why they like to go to that particular partner we have there, how it's going to enhance their learning, and what it's going to mean for their degree. We have an interview process, and then we select the successful applicants from there and provide a whole lot of induction, orientation, and pre-departure meetings before they go. They usually start on the first Monday in September, and they finish on the last Friday in January, and then come back, have February to themselves before they start their next academic year after that. It's a very popular program. We've got 6 students over there now. And great to see as well that DFAT's actually been increasing the value of the scholarship each year as the cost of everything sort of rises and increases to make it much more affordable for our students as well. Okay, I mentioned the work plan before, so I thought I'd just give you a bit of an indication of sort of what's under the hood and what's in the background. So all of our students cannot go on placement until there's been a work plan in place. The work plan is put into the system. It's reviewed by what we call the work academic lead, or the WIL academic lead, sorry. Tom's the academic lead in civil, I'm the academic lead in biomedical. So we review it to make sure it's appropriate. And I'm just showing you some of the key fields here. So we have a project name, we talk about what the scope of the project is. We then ask them to put down some of the deliverables or outcomes expected for the project over the 5 months. We ask them to outline all the milestones, and you can see this is where we've started to see some of the, hopefully the learnings of what we've taught them in the project management topic coming through. It's a university requirement, and we have to do this for legal reasons to actually identify if the industry partner has highlighted that the project they're working on is sensitive in any way. So intellectually property, so IP, or commercially sensitive, or just sensitive in some way, so that's highlighted. And if it's a defense project, we have to flag it as well. That then forms the basis of our sort of positionality for saying, yes, this project can go forward, or no, we'd like you to work a little bit more in this area to describe exactly what you're going to be doing. And then the student gets the work plan, it gets signed off, and we go from there. In terms of some expansion, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, so like I said, being a core 20-week program that started from the get-go in the early 90s was really where things started for the School of Engineering here at Flinders University. But the next expansion really happened when we started teaching what we call our innovation and enterprise topics or awards in this space in 2009. So we then started having a bit of a mixed cohort go out. Students who are engineers that we know and understand, we've been doing it for a long time, and now our innovation and enterprise students, and sometimes students who are doing a double degree in those spaces as well. Because things started to look very favourable from what was happening in the work integrated learning space, And our Vice Chancellor at the time wanted all students at Flinders University in all degrees to really have an opportunity to undertake WIL. Our CS and IT, or computer science and IT students, started to have an option in their degrees where you can do a 3-month or a 12-week experience, like our enterprise and innovation students too. That started to get more and more momentum. We teach master's degrees here. So instead of a 4-year opportunity, it's a 2-year opportunity. And so rather than the 20-week immersive opportunity, because it's so long, it takes out a whole semester, our postgraduate students started to have this as core. So no longer optional for them, but a core requirement. Maths and design started to see what was going on in terms of our students, the graduate employability opportunities that were coming our way, and said, right, well, can we look at it as well? Before really we started to go back to our CS and IT colleagues. Now, interestingly, when we teach software engineering, our software engineering degree is accredited by both Engineers Australia as a software engineer, but also ACS, the Australian Computer Society. And so both of those panels were seeing how the software engineers were really having a lot of opportunity moving forward with their immersive 20-week. And so rather than being 12, it actually switched to being literally a 20-week or 5-month opportunity for them as well. So giving them that immersive industry experience. And now we've had it even go further. So it's gone from being optional to core. And we now offer WIL in some format, depending on the fabric of the degree and how it's structured, and of course, electivity and space in the awards that we offer. We either have 6, 12, or 20 weeks across the whole college. So if you're a student doing any award, it's an option for you to take. And so you can go and see your course coordinator. You can say, look, instead of having these electives here, can I do a WIL placement? I've got this industry partner, or someone I'm working with has, and we can put it into their study plan and off they go. So it's been a graduation all the way along to going from optional to core and then moving up to that 20-week immersive experience. Okay, so this is some of the data now coming out from our preparation topic. So on the left-hand side, I'm showing you the results from a number of years, 2021 through to 2025, where we've asked students before they come to the first class, what's your understanding of where you can find support? Are you confident to find your own WIL placement? Or are you confident to understand the process? And we're showing that in the blue, red, and the green bars on the graphs there. But that's the before shot. And then after we deliver effectively the 1 3-hour class on an afternoon in that first week, where we tell them about what the expectations are, how we do it, have student and industry panels come and talk to them, talk about what the supports are. You can see on the right-hand side, those cohorts have really gone from 1 in 5 to maybe 2 in 10 understanding what's going on, to more than half the cohort all understanding, okay, I know what I have to do now. Their confidence of finding a placement, their confidence in knowing where to look, know what's expected of them, which I would like to think is typical. They probably haven't come across WIL before, not unless they cross-talk between years. So a 3rd-year student talking to a 2nd-year student, telling them of their experiences. So I think this is probably typical, and it's nice to see that we can actually see a dramatic improvement in their understanding and their confidence after the first class. Just so you can understand what our students are thinking about, possibly this is what your students are about. So we have the first class, we asked them the warm-up survey, and the data we just showed you on the warm-up survey was there. We then asked them what we call a cool-down survey. So are there still some remaining questions about anything that's on your mind that's keeping you up at night or making you become quite anxious? So I'm unsure of the amount of time I need to complete. How many hours or days exactly do I have to do? I'm underqualified, or I feel I'm inexperienced. I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I'm anxious about finding a placement. How do I know if a company will accept placement students? Will they accept me if I'm not a HD student? It's a very common question. Can you provide us a list of companies? And I'll show you one way that we do that. I'm an international student and I'm worried I won't find a placement. In fact, when Tom and I talked a couple of years ago at A Squared, E Squared, the Australasian Association for Engineering Education, there was lots of conversation about how we place our international students. South Australia is a defence state. There's a lot of defence companies, primes, and others here in the state. And of course, international students cannot do a placement with them because they're not Australian citizens. That knocks out a whole lot of opportunities, mainly in our mechanical and electrical electronic areas. So we have to think creatively and do different things because they can't go there. So this is a bit of a snapshot, and we're happy to unpack some of these questions and how we answer them in the question time down the track. One of the other things we do, and we have to thank Vladka for this, is we ask the students to undertake a survey. the survey before they undergo their placement, during the middle of their placement, and then at the end of the placement, which is around transferable skills. And this is amazingly enlightening. So it produces effectively a spider web of their thoughts and processes on their self-rating of things like communicating effectively or thinking critically, their employability. And I'm showing you a snapshot of an anonymized student that we had come through the course and the spider web that they had for before, during, or in the middle, and then afterwards as well. And interestingly, if you look at just the bottom sector where about the 7 o'clock position effectively over here in employability, the student's self-perception with their own transferable skills assessment of their employability was roughly sitting here. So not that strong, but then halfway through, then by the end, you can see that they developed the skills or the understanding, or they really learned and understood what it meant to be in an industry and what it meant to be an engineer. And on reflection, looking back, they actually thought, look, I can see how I've improved. I can see how I've developed, and this is my story. Some quotes to go along with this particular self-reflection, because we asked them to do this. It's a compulsory requirement for their final report. They have to do this survey. They have to reflect on it, and they have to, excuse me, comment on it as well. So this particular student talking about how they felt overall, you can see words like imposter syndrome, fear of failure, prevented her from maybe saying more in meetings earlier on because she felt she was quite junior. So, however, as she reflected in the increase of scores, this fear of the self-doubt gradually lessened. So key weekly meetings in the team environment drastically improved my communication, my teamwork, my professionalism. The latter surprisingly peaked mid-placement. This is likely due to the fast rate at which I befriended everyone. So, going into a very different environment, really understanding where the lie of the land was, and then seeing how they fitted into that whole structure overall. So this started off as a research project. It still can maintain throughout. So we ask every student to do this, and there's so much value in having them reflect on their experiences and report it in this fashion. One of the things we ask them to do is to produce a poster. So this is one of their accessible items. We give them a rubric and some guidelines around what they have to do. They have to produce a visual abstract of their project effectively in the form of a poster, just like they go into a conference. We ask them to do some things very specifically. So we have to have an overview of the project. They have to tell us what they've effectively been doing. This is a civil engineering student and a civil engineering project. Because they've done project management, so I've hooked back to that a few times now, we actually asked them to actually outline, well, what were the milestones that were set down for your project? How did they use project management tools to deliver the project, and what did that look like? And then we asked them specifically to say, well, you're part of a project, you're probably part of a team. So what was your personal contribution? What did you actually do? What was carved out of what could be a bigger project? And what did you deliver for the company or your partner? And so we specifically say you have to actually do this too. So this is how this particular student has addressed all the necessary criteria in the Wellington Road roundabout civil engineering area. Just for overview purposes, so this is a student who went to Singapore and was working over there. So again, you can see the same things, the project overview, what some of the objectives were, the personal contributions, again, communicating their project to a lay audience in a visual way. One of our students in mechanical engineering who has been working with a company here based in Adelaide and how they've delivered their project. One of our science students, so we specifically just pulled this one out because this is not an engineering or a computer science or an IT student, it's one of our science students. And this particular student actually won the People's Choice Award or one of the awards on the day. So we have a big exposition or expo day where we showcase all of our students and all of the engagement with industry and all of the fantastic work they're doing on placement. And so how she's communicated her project as well. And lastly, we didn't want to leave the IT CS students out, so how a CSIT project is being communicated. This one here looking at AI tools with one of the companies that we work with quite a lot here in Adelaide. So one assessment item where it's a visual poster, but you can see how it's floated across engineering, CSIT, and the sciences as well. What we do though is we take all of those projects, and Tom leads this, and because of a pivot that we had to do thanks to COVID-19 in the 2020 year. Of course, we couldn't have our usual come to Tonsley and have a big exposition. We were not allowed to do that. So we pivoted to an online process called Kunstmatrix. So Kunstmatrix is an online museum for artwork. And so we turn our posters into art and we host them on walls. And you can see in this particular screenshot I'm showing you here, this is the biomedical engineering room. And every single poster on the wall is a clickable item. You can click on it, you can zoom in, you can read the poster just like I was showing you screenshots of it before. And you can actually see what all our students have been getting up to. Now, one thing I didn't highlight on all of those posters is on all of them, you can see the industry partner, the person they were working with, and who the university supervisor was. So if you've got an interest in that project or company, you can always go back to the supervisor and ask them about it as well. If I do a Alt Tab to here, so this is the online Kunz matrix in the background. So I can share the address in the chat later on. You can Google it. And if I scroll down further, you can see we've created a room. So here's the IT software engineering room, computer science, mechanical engineering, triple E, biomedical. And if you click on each of those rooms, you go into the room like I showed you with the screenshot before. All right. I'm going to hand you over to Tom.
Yeah, or maybe I'll just hang on that point there. So the Kunstmatrix has actually been very useful for us, and just for explaining what is normal, what is the expectations, what is the project, and that goes both for students as well as industry. So sometimes industry come to us and say, well, what can your students do? What are the expectations? We just send them straight to there. They can navigate around in different rooms and look at a whole range, dozens and dozens of different projects that have happened over the last few years. So same concept I think Dave was saying early on when a student says, oh, do you have a list of companies that I can contact? We say, go to Kunstmatrix. These are the successful companies that we've had recently. There's more out there. You can find whatever you like, but it's just a good starting point when people want to know what the expectations are. Okay, so for the second half of the presentation, and I'm noticing the time here, so I'll try to move through this quickly. Most of it is now the data. So we have a lot of surveys that we do throughout this whole process. But there's also the inbuilt university data collection as well. So it's either called SETs or CELTs. I think we've all heard that at our institutions, Student Evaluation of Learning and Teaching. You'll see when I produce or present this data, I've just written down the bottom here where it's coming from. So this is from the end of placement survey. And this is the student voice. So the first few slides I've got here is what the students are saying about their experience. So we asked them, to what extent do you feel better prepared for your transition into graduate employment? And we're getting very positive results here from a healthy number of students. So over about 5 or 6 years worth of asking students, we've got about 300 of them that have responded, and probably collecting that up there, over 90% are saying they're reasonably prepared or higher. We also then ask, how satisfied are you with what you achieved during your placement? And again, that's probably over 95% are saying they're satisfied or strongly satisfied. Some other data that we've collected from a few more here. So you can see the end number has increased because I think we started this survey a little bit earlier. So we've collected it a little bit more students along the way. 81% of students agree that they received a good level of support during their placement. So that configuration that we have of the preparation topic, the project management alongside the placement works quite well. And we're finding nearly 3/4 of our students are finding some form of employment offer following their placement. So there's longer, more immersive placements are leading to some form of employment. Now, when we say some form of employment, for the engineers, they're doing their placement in the end of their 3rd year. They need to come back to campus to do their full-time thesis year. It's a very serious year. So they can't go into full-time employment. But it's quite common that the company says, hey, you've been here for 20 weeks. You're actually quite useful. You're aware of all the projects we're working on. Can we keep employing you for 1 day a week? That's actually quite common, 1 or 2 days a week for our engineers to keep working at these companies. And it's definitely much better that they're doing that rather than working somewhere like a coffee shop, etc., which isn't related to their degree. Some more data here, and this is broken up year by year. So this is actually coming from the university system, what we call SETs. So year by year, we then see the feedback from these fairly generic questions that we get here, and this applies to all subjects across the whole university. So overall, I had a worthwhile learning experience. We're getting pretty strong values over there in that strongly agree or agree area. And not only that, it's quite consistent. There's a little bit of noise in the data, but quite consistently, you can see the strongly agree or agree is the higher bars that we're looking at there. And it's also worth noting that this goes back to pre-COVID. So the COVID years for us were 20 to 21. So in terms of COVID landed, I think, late 19, but it was really the lockdowns in 20 and 21. We're still getting positive responses from our students here for the placements where we're trying to send them out into industry. Then this is more focused on the teachers, so the lecturing or teaching team. Again, we're getting very strong positive feedback here. So investing that time into the preparation topic and clearly explaining the expectations before they go out into placement is extremely valuable. Dave and I put a lot of time into carefully explaining everything and make sure we answer all their questions a semester prior to them going out into industry. And that's where we're getting that positive feedback there. Some quotes. So in those surveys, we obviously asked them to click a few boxes or do some Likert scales, but we asked them to write some text about the whole experience. So the student voice here, and I'll just read what's in bold, but in general, the feedback we're getting is the depth. All right, that's the general emerging theme that we're getting. So the first student there is saying it's more of a chance to really accomplish more. It's that depth of the experience. Second student, the bold there, is actually taking the theory learned in university and applying it in a real world situation. Third student saying the project was the right level of challenging, exciting, and interesting, and that helped me grow and learn so much. So the depth of that experience is very rare for us to get a feedback from a student saying 20 weeks is way too long. I wish I was out of there in 2 weeks. They want to be there longer and have that immersive experience and contribute to genuine projects. So I'll go into the industry feedback now, but before I transition into the industry feedback, I think it's worth explaining the difference between the student and the industry feedback. A student goes through this process once and once only, okay? So they don't really get the ability to compare a short WIL experience to a long WIL experience. They just have a single WIL experience. And generally, the student is comparing the WIL experience to typical classroom equations and reports and laboratories, etc. And in general, we do get a lot of positive feedback from the student because they want to be out of the university. They want to be in an industry, a company that they've chosen where they see a future there. So we typically do get positive experience from the student, but it's industry who takes students from all different universities at different levels for different amounts of time that can really give us that depth of feedback on their experience of the Flinders method. So using this student as a gauge, would you consider hiring Flinders University graduates if a position was available? Strong values there. So we're getting a lot of definitely yes or probably yes. And again, from quite a few companies here, so nearly 200 companies that we've surveyed, and then asking them basically if they want to continue. So once they've done the 20-week experience, what did you feel about that? Do you want to host students again in the future? And again, we get very positive feedback from industry. Another graph here, just asking the company, what is your feedback on the student's performance? Do you think they were a high-performing student or a pass student, credit student, etc.? Again, we're getting very positive feedback here. And maybe there's more to this than what first meets the eye. When the student's there for longer, there's more of a deeper relationship between the company and the student gets a longer chance to perform well. If they're doing a shorter placement, maybe they're only there for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, etc. The student really just gets to learn the people and the places and the processes. They don't really get a chance to prove that they can perform well. So we're getting these higher grades partly because of that longer immersive experience. So what feedback do we get from industry? And I'll read the whole lot of this first top one here because it's quite a detailed feedback about the 5-month experience. So this is the CEO of Tonkin, an engineering consulting company, saying as an employer, the opportunity to embed the student into the work environment while they still have access to support from the university and oversight and guidance from the university provides a valuable point of difference to the traditional approach to providing work placements. The 5-month period provides opportunity for the students to be trained on the type of work they are doing, get actively involved in meaningful client-facing work, and hopefully see some of the projects they get involved in to completion. So it means the CEO is basically saying, I can get this student, and rather than doing surface level menial tasks around the office, I can actually devote them to a project and actually have them representing my company, facing towards the client and actually doing genuine work for a longer amount of time. So it's hinting that there's a better return on investment. If you're investing in this student, you want them to become an employee rather than just, oh, you're here for 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, you get to know everyone and then you leave. You're actually doing genuine work. And we're seeing that in that second quote there. The 5-month model works very well with industry and gives both parties the best opportunity to integrate within the business. Okay, so getting towards the end here, I'll start wrapping up and explaining just in a summary of what works well and then also the limitations. Not everything works perfectly when you go to a longer placement, and then we'll get to some of the summaries and conclusions. So what works well? Industry do appreciate that depth of experience and that reputation. After a number of years that we've been doing this, the reputation has grown, is very strong. And most importantly, and that's what we're focusing on this slide here, is that employment rates are strong. So the graph on the left here, and I do believe the data all comes from the same quilt data. This is all national data. You can look this up at either Compare ED or Good Universities Guide. They simply group the data a little bit differently. So I believe Compare ED groups it in 2-year blocks. They're due to do the next 2 years. So this is actually the latest data. They'll then release the data for the next 2 years, and they group it as just a discipline of engineering. Good Universities Guide, accessing the same data, does it year by year, and then groups engineering alongside IT, computer science, etc., as technology. Either way you look at it and how they group it in terms of, say, the national average, state average, or our university, or group of 8 average, Flinders University always has that boost in terms of employability. These longer placements are leading to either full-time employment that we can see down the bottom here, or just some type of employment. This one here is then saying full-time employment. So getting that 5, maybe up to about 10% boost in employability is quite strong metrics. What also works well? So this is the data for either engineering or the computer and IT classes that we have, subjects. We call them topics at Flinders. We're looking at the pass rate and the withdrawal rate over a number of years, and we've gone back to pre-COVID. So we can see that actually the pass rate and the withdrawal rate is quite stable throughout. That means we did actually manage to survive COVID quite well. There's barely a blip in the data here. So we did survive COVID quite well, and we're finding that those longer placements, they're not becoming a mountain that's too hard to climb. We don't find that these students attempt it and then either fail or withdraw. In fact, the withdrawal rates, I think the highest you're seeing here is 3%. That's probably only a couple of students that are withdrawing. This is what you'll find naturally across any subjects at university. And the pass rate, or if we flip it around to look at the fail rate, I think the highest fail rate you'll see here is 15%, where you can see from these 85%, everything else is better than that. Again, any subject in the university, a fail rate of about 15% is pretty good. And when it comes to that 15% fail rate, a lot of the times that is just the student themselves not submitting the assessments. So while they're out there in industry having that genuine experience, they need to keep in mind that they're still a student at university and submit those academic reports. So some limitations. So this is where it's explaining it's not all just roses and butterflies. There are some limitations that we do find from committing to a longer program. You do need, it is going to be resource high. So you do need a dedicated WIL team, like we explained, like Dave explained at the beginning. You need a dedicated WIL team for the professional staff to set this up. All the academic staff will gain that wonderful wording of silent workload. So every staff member here at our Tonsley campus, where we're doing these placements, they're always looking after some student. They're tied to some student in industry. We physically go visit them in industry. We have a duty of care. We want to make sure they're working in a safe environment and doing appropriate work while they're on their placement. That means we need to drive out and visit them. That's going to be some workload for the academics for supervision. Having a whole semester, so substituting a whole semester for placement, is going to be very hard to fit into the shorter degrees. So in our 4-year engineering degrees, we can do that. We can take that whole semester and dedicate it to WIL, but we choose not to do it for the postgraduate engineering degree. That's a 2-year or 4 semesters. Dedicating a quarter of their whole studies to WIL, we see that as a little bit too much, although we're looking at that as potentially an option for high-performing students. So we wouldn't mandate it as core for all students. We do get that feedback that sometimes companies say, and when I say sometimes, it really is only about 2 or 3 companies that have said they're worried about committing to a bad fit for a long time. So if they do have a bad student, it doesn't work out quite well, they seem a bit concerned, oh, we're going to commit to this for a very long time. Our feedback for that is, well, make sure you improve your interviewing processes. You're not committed to taking a student. You can always say no if you think there's going to be a bad fit. One that's a little bit more common is the inflexible companies. And this quite commonly occurs if we've got a large company and the headquarters is not here in our state of South Australia, if it's in Melbourne, Sydney, etc. they want to do the 20-week experience, they reach out to headquarters and headquarters says, no, we've always done 12 weeks. We're not going to change our paperwork. That's our process and we're just inflexible. So unfortunately, there will be some companies that we simply can't connect with and adopt into this program. Also, scalability is a concern. The total numbers of students that we get through this, so this is total numbers of students that do WIL in our college, that's both the 12 and the 20 weeks, is probably around about 300, you think, Dave, something like that. Maybe about half of them are doing the 20 weeks. If we had to scale that up to one of the other larger universities, say 1,000 students or more, there'd be a bit of concern about how can we manage this? Do we just simply increase the size of our WIL team? We're not quite sure. We are looking at, as we slowly grow, how can we grow and maintain the quality? So the outcomes, what have we got from running this program? One of the great things is that our accreditation body, like Dave said at the beginning, Engineers Australia, every time that they come and visit us every 3 to 4 years, they always look at our WIL program and say, that's fantastic. And we've got one or more commendations, formal commendations, from the last 4 visits. So from 2009 up to our recent one, 2021, we'll then have another one early next year. We've had feedback such as, this is the gold standard. This is fantastic placements for engineering in Australia. We've also had that expansion, like Dave showed with that timeline, showing how we've expanded throughout the college, just from engineering and then across the college, and then even outside of our college into other areas of the university. This model would work well for any situation where a student needs to apply for their placement. So in education, I think nursing, areas like that, you're just told you're going to this hospital, you're going to this school. That doesn't really work well with our model. We're working with that model where a student needs to interview and find the company themselves. But we found areas, I think in the health sciences, we've looked at areas that they're looking at adopting our model. We've got some university level awards. We've got the VC Award for Excellence in Teaching, and then most recently, as we're explaining in this presentation, the AAUT Award or the Program Award. And the feedback that we got is written there in blue. So it says it's the sustained positive impact on student learning, robust evaluation framework, and commitment to flexibility and inclusivity across STEM disciplines. Additionally, it's comprehensive feedback mechanisms and sector recognition from accrediting bodies. So what we're looking at there is Engineers Australia, the accrediting body, like what we do. We've got those surveys and the feedback mechanisms, and then we're flexible and inclusive for any student within our college. So now we're getting to general advice. So this is probably the main meat. If you're thinking about applying for one of these awards and you want to know the feedback or the advice from Dave and I'll go through each one of these points one at a time. So
We're about to be quick here. Stick with the time.
Okay, we're going to stick with the time. So let's be really quick. Maybe actually pop them all up on the slide at once. Make sure we don't run over time. So it's a significant effort. It is like a category 1 grant that you apply for. You need to prepare, gather evidence, and polish. Be careful within your team who you actually have in your team and know who does what. Request support from your university. We had an external mentor for 2 applications, and that value of the external mentor was absolutely immense. And make sure you apply and put equal weighting on each of the criteria. There's usually 4 areas. Make sure you look at the weightings and apply equal weighting to all 4. More details here. I'm looking at Stuart. If we're running out of time, Stuart, feel free to jump in.
We've got quite a few questions, guys. So
okay, I've got maybe 1 or 2 more slides. I'll brush through this quickly.
Go ahead.
Focus on the program rather than the people. The impact and measuring that is quite important. And I've got a next slide that explains how to measure that impact. The fundamentals and explaining why yours is different than the fundamentals is very important. I'll just quickly say this Impel model, so Impact Management Planning and Evaluation Ladder, we found that extremely useful for quantifying what impact we have. And that varies from just a localized impact. So someone in the office next to you is seeing what you're doing, thinks it's great. Right at the top here, you're looking at beyond your institution. So look into that Impel model. And I think all the summaries that we have here, if we're short on time, I'll quickly just brush through those. You'll see these slides up on them. I will provide them or be in the YouTube link. And I think we'll wrap it up there. Any final questions you've got? Maybe you can email Dave or we can try to address them now.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really informative, and I can see why you've won some awards, guys. You're very thorough and really in-depth program. I'm sure the students love it. So we'll get to a few questions. We'll go a little bit over time. So apologies if people start disappearing, and you're getting lots of love in the chat, so that's good.
Thanks, guys.
So we'll just get to a few questions and see how we go. If you've got a few
Absolutely.
extra minutes, that'd be appreciated. Margaret, are you there, Margaret? You had a number of questions, and we'll start with a couple. Margaret may have disappeared.
May have disappeared.
She needs to leave the presentation. Okay, I'll ask you one of her questions.
Sure, absolutely. So we can't see the chat from this side, Stuart. So yeah.
Oh, can you not see the chat? It's been popping off.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
She's interested to know the Flinders engineering numbers.
Yep. So a typical first year class here would be of the order of say between 150 to 170. I used to teach engineering design. My biggest class was about 240 first years, and that was in the early 2000s. But I think we're currently operating at about an average of about 180 to 190 in a first year class.
That's undergraduate.
That's undergraduate only. Yeah, yeah.
Then the masters is probably, well, what numbers would you guess this? It fluctuates a bit, particularly with the borders being open and closed recently, between 50 to 100, I'd say. Yeah.
Thanks. If you don't mind, I'll forward Margaret's email to you from the registration list because I think she's keen to engage with you a bit deeper. There's quite a few questions from Hong Sin. Are you there, Hong?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, can you ask your questions?
Yep. So I've got a few, sorry.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fine.
so the first question is, what process do you have in place to ensure the consistency equality across the placements, and particularly when students have to find their own opportunities, and also when the placement is overseas?
Yep. So maybe I'll address the second one first, only because I've been looking after the international program since I came here in 2010. So the international program, we put a lot more duty of care and responsibility around due diligence to make sure that where they're going is appropriate. So we need to usually have a connection with the host that they're going to. That was certainly the case when I went and did my placement in Toronto. So there was the dean of the school had actually done a sabbatical over there, knew the people, they were still at the center, set everything up, and off we went. So we apply a lot more focused due diligence for our international opportunities. And that's why I'm going to Singapore and Malaysia the week after next to make sure things are okay on the ground again. If it's an opportunity the student has found, and we do have that, so we have students go, oh, I've got family in Croatia, because that happened a couple of years ago. There's a biomedical engineering facility in the city. Can we then we do more due diligence again? So we contact the host, and then the thing we have to do is make sure the projects are suitable, it's at the right level, the expectations can be managed, and they know the student's going to be there for 5 months. Because with an international placement, Hung, as you can appreciate, if it doesn't work out, then it's a lot harder to do what we call an extraction when they're overseas compared to working with a company who's local here in Adelaide to say, look, what can we do to make this work? Where are some of the, the problems, or where's it grating, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
The quality one, I'll answer the first part, then I might hand it to Tom. So in some ways, we're quite lucky because a lot of our partners, as you saw with one of the graphs, are actually legacy partners who come in, year out. And we have a lot of our students who are now graduates, and they're 5, 6, 10-year employees in the company now. So they know what happens. They know what the student needs to do. They know the expectations. And they help a lot with setting that opportunity for them to make sure the project's right. If it's electronics, they give the electronics experience, maybe some supervision around the software. If it's mechanical, again, set them up on the software, get them used to maybe using ANSYS where they might have used Inventor somewhere else and things like that. So that, software change. And the role of the wall, so I briefly touched on that, WIL academic lead to make sure that it's an appropriate project. So Tom has oversight through civil, I have oversight through biomedical engineering, again, to make sure that, they're going to get a good experience and they're going to get the opportunity that we expect them to get as well.
Yeah, and one of the points, and we say this in the preparation topic, we say to all the students, your placement is going to be your placement. You cannot look at the student next to you and go, I'm going to have the exact same experience, because placement is just not like that. The same as all of us in our jobs, the experience that we have in our job is going to be unique for us, but the opportunities and the support is going to be the same for all students. Also, we do get quite a common feedback or question that we get, it might have been in the questions here, is whether or not these positions can be paid or not. The paperwork is quite separate, whether they're paid or unpaid. The insurance is either with the university because they're doing a topic or subject here at university, or it's with the company because they're paid as an employee. So that paperwork is quite different. But we don't ever say to a company, you must pay, you mustn't pay, etc. And the paid versus unpaid, it depends on the discipline. It fluctuates a little bit, probably as low as say 20% in some areas, high as like 50, 60% in other areas. We don't jump in, we don't tell industry whether they pay or don't pay. It's up to them.
Thanks, guys. We have a question from Samantha from Uni of Canberra, I think that is. Hi, Samantha. I see you there. And Hong Sing, we'll come back to you if we have time. Okay, I know you have some more questions.
Yeah, no problem.
Hongshin and I actually work together. We're at the University of Canberra and we're
Oh.
in the Faculty of Science and Technology. We're going through some changes at the moment. And so that's why probably the questions around what systems do you use to manage, and I also had a question around what does I had a question about how many students, and you've answered that, but how many staff do you have to manage it? And I even went so far as to say, what does your, organizational plan look like? Because again, we're going through this change and it would be good to kind of see how others do it. You have much more volume, a higher volume than we do, but so I guess that's one of my questions around what systems do you use to manage the processes for all of the stakeholders, like hosts as well as students, as well as university staff, and what staff kind of facilitate all that?
Yeah, so Samantha and Humson, look, great questions, and we're happy to take this offline and do it here as well. So the university wagged the dog for us a number of years ago and said, we shall use in place. In place was being used by nursing and teaching where they're much larger cohorts. They're in the thousands. And as Tom said, the differentiator there is they do allocated placements, whereas we do student choice placements. So we use in place. I'll have to say it works quite well for what we do. So the professional staff on our award and in our team manage the whole part of it, and then we have access to it. So when those work plans come together, that's done through in place, and we can just do drop-down menus and feedback, etc. Qualtrics is then the system the university uses to collect the feedback. So the industry survey that goes out and the survey to the students is done through Qualtrics. And I believe Qualtrics is also the back end for the transferable skills survey. Again, they go to a Qualtrics link and click on it to produce their spider web, as we call it. The more important question, though, so you've got a bit of a sense for our size. So yeah, probably 190 to 200 undergraduates and about 50 to maybe 80 postgraduates. So we're not a big school. So in any given experience, and semester 2 is the big work placement semester for us. That's where we carve it out in semester 6. Because of a lot of mid-year starts, we also have a first semester intake who's on placement too, because they just start mid-year, finish mid-year. It would be very typical for me to have between, say, 3 and 6 students each, just in biomedical engineering. Tom, you would have what, up to?
Yeah, about the same. I think we tried to set a rule that no one took more than 5 for a while, but there were sometimes you might get, so I actually had 4 or 5 students all at the same company. So that's convenient. I can just go to one company visit, meet all of them at once. So yeah, it fluctuates a bit, but I'd target about 5 students per academic for supervision. One other point I was going to add in, when you're talking about systems, so Flinders itself currently uses Canvas as our main teaching. That's where we put all our grades, etc. into. But we used to use Moodle, is it? Or Blackboard? Moodle. It worked fine in either of those two. The biggest challenge is that when a student starts a placement, they're not all starting at the same time. So the submission dates for all the assessments are all staggered, and managing that is the biggest headache. But them just writing a report and submitting it and getting it marked, etc., is not really that challenging.
So if you're wondering about the next question, Samantha, around workload, and Tom had the silent workload on there. So, I'm juggling, or I have 6 honours students at the moment. I have 8 PhD students. I have 4 or 6, WIL students. It is work. We have to visit them. So mandatory.
You have 8 PhD students, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mandatorily. That is a lot. Exactly right, Stuart. Yes. So we have to deliver. So we have to go and visit students in the workplace. The second visit can be virtual, but the first visit should be boots on the ground, going in there and meeting people and seeing the work environment. We have different rules if it's a new host compared to an existing host, where year on year on year, it's the same supervisor, same company, same group. We know that group quite well. But a lot of times, if we get pushback from staff or others around the number of students, they actually a lot of times become your future honour student. With that compulsory honours year, you've developed that rapport and relationship. You've been tagged to that student for a reason, because you've got some disciplinarity, specificity around the project they're doing. They more than likely become your honours students, so you see them the next year. And then that could be the door opening to a PhD opportunity as well after that. So it's an investment in time with the industry partner and the student as well at the same time.
Thank you. Yeah, we also use Canvas and In Place. But yeah, it's just the day-to-day kind of correspondence and assessing applications for placements and having kind of a central portal. So we're actually looking at building something through stuff that we have in our IT department. But yeah, I just thought I'd ask you. And just quickly, sorry, I don't need to monopolize, but our requirement is 450. We've seen total. We've seen other universities have a 420-hour requirement, and then some universities say, well, you can do of that hour requirement, you can do, a portion of it can be sort of in retail almost, sort of not related to the discipline, and other hours need to be very specific under an engineer, and kind of there's this real spectrum. And maybe this is a question for Engineers Australia as to how we can structure it. But do you have any comments about that? Because you're fully into it, you're fully,
Yeah. So maybe the political response would be that we see it as a 20-week, 5-month engineering experience. We don't fall back to a 60-day experience where some could be, like you said, literally doing anything, but a mandatory quota should be in engineering. We say, no, look, we're producing engineers. We want them in an engineering company doing technical work, being around that environment for the 60 days if they have to do the 12-week experience because of their course structure, or ideally for 20 weeks if they're an undergraduate doing it that way. But we know of other universities who fulfill their EPP to EA through guest lectures, site tours, visits, and some other things. We just don't take that pathway.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just to add to that,
Go ahead.
how do you track the hours of the engineering experience?
Probably through In Place.
Yeah, the best answer is we don't count hours. Okay, we let industry decide what is a day, and then we keep saying 5 months or 20 weeks. More precisely, it's 100 working days, and we want them to produce a logbook at the end where each day a student has written down, what did you do? Show us some photos. Show us where your code was up to at that point. Show us a picture of the construction site you went to on that day. And we want to see 100 working days. We do allow, I think it's up to as high as 5 of those days can be sick leave days, which is in line with Safe Work SA. What our state says is a reasonable amount of leave. That's the guidelines we go off of.
And they have to keep a mandatory logbook the whole time. So that's one of their accessible items, but at the NGP, non-graded pass level. So again, from a documentation perspective, there should be 100 entries effectively for our 5-month student, or 60 entries on a daily basis detailing the work they've done. It can be soft or hard or a hybrid, again, for making sure we know they've done the right thing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. We've got time for a couple more. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. Sarah Wang from over the ditch in New Zealand. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, good morning. Well, still morning here over our time. Kia ora. I'm from actually university in Auckland. We're currently looking into In Place, obviously, as we're doing self-placement for our business and law faculty. So we do a lot of self-placement, and we have 5 intakes within a year, and it's 10 weeks for each one of them. So it's quite intense. We've got quite a busy schedule usually for intake 2 and 4, about 200 plus students that we have to manage. I guess my question, I think a lot of it has been answered by the question from Hangshin and Samantha as well. It's that I know that you've done student poster, for example, in terms of assessment. Is there any other assessment that you currently have?
Yeah, and we just haven't walked through them all. So they have to, you heard us say they had to keep a logbook, so a daily logbook of what they're doing. They have to do a poster for the Expo Day, but they have to actually prepare a presentation in the form that we have high school students and staff and like a community Expo Day where they have to be engaging around their posters. So it's not a PowerPoint prepare a presentation, but they have to have like a 3-minute thesis in their head so that when someone comes past, they go, okay, look, I've been at Red Arc Electronics for the last, maybe 4 months. I've been doing this project. They can have some artifact on a table in front of them. They can bring along product, artifact, outputs, software, anything like that. And so the mandate is come along to Expo Day. Your poster will be hanging for you, printed off A0, but you come along, be prepared to engage the audience. They have to do what we call a specification report. So in the first 8 weeks, they do a project documentation of their whole project they're working on in that 8-week phase that's going to see them through to their 20 weeks. So that's a very defined, heavily mandated, you have to answer these things, which is leading again on the project management topic. So an RACI chart, who's responsible, accountable, keeps in communication and is involved in the project, SWOT analysis, etc. So the spec and then the final report. So before they finish, they do a final report. That wraps up everything. That summarizes their whole project from go to woe. If the project changed, which happens quite a bit, they describe all of the work, all the technicality. They have appendices to include information. They do that self-reflection, so the spider web goes in there as well. And that's scaffolding them up to be a final year student, because the deliverable for a final year student is an honors thesis. So the final report is really getting them ready to write a big document for thesis. The last input is we ask the supervisor to send in a nominal indicative grade of what they feel, given they've seen them for 5 months. And so all those inputs become what they get for their mark.
I guess it's part of that. We also have something similar, and we have a portfolio that they have to build. Currently, it's very manual. It's just a Word document. Do you have any? I guess you use Canvas. We use Canvas as well. Is there another software application that you use to help students build this portfolio and reflection?
So it's usually through their logbook, but we don't mandate how. So they can do it in Word, they can do it in
Oh,
Canva,
okay, I see.
in OneNote, whatever, however they document or however their industry partners. So some of our partners are very on the pointy end of the IP spectrum. And so they will actually give them the official IP documentation. All your work must go in here, because that's how we get the patent attorney to verify. So you don't do this, you follow this way, which is industry telling them how to operate in a professional environment. So we just say, keep a logbook, and then industry will tell them, or they'll choose a mechanism to do it after that.
Oh, I see. And then I guess is it the academic supervisors who mark all the assessment?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
okay, that's good to know, because I guess our problem is, as you may have as well, is finding a placement supervisors to visit them and to actually take students on. That's one of the hardest part. And sometimes we've got new staff that we have to onboard and train as well. That's another piece. And then having that 10-week to 11-week placements 5 times in a year, the time frame is quite short. So yeah, I'm sure you've come up with that some sort of problem as well. Thank you so much for that. That's been really helpful.
Oh, you're welcome, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. One question left. I'm afraid we're running out of time. I've actually got to run off to another meeting myself. There's a few questions that haven't been answered. So later on today, I'll send out the recording. If you don't mind, I'll add your emails to this, and then people can just ask you directly. Is that going to be okay with you guys?
That's fine, Stuart. And we apologize for going over time. That's fine. Yeah.
Fantastic. So one last question from John Gartland. Are you there, John? I think I saw your name. Yes.
Yeah, hi Stuart, how you going?
Good, John. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, guys. My question was around the recruitment process and whether your team manages that on behalf of the industry. So not so much the interviews, but I guess the pre-interview process. So is GPA taken into account, or other elements? And then what happens to those students who just for whatever reason have been unsuccessful in securing an opportunity?
Yeah, look, really good question, Stuart, because that's the whole spectrum of what we have to deal with here at university. So the line and verse that we tell all the students, because of the numbers, is This is your opportunity in a safe environment with the full university support to apply for your first job, which you do, guess what, in a year's time when there's no support because you've finished. So we will put you through CV workshops, interview workshops. We'll work with you. We will hold your hand. Sasha can come along to interviews if you'd like. And so we really encourage them to go and just give it their best shot and to source that placement for themselves. There are some hosts, and I'll just say some who come to us and say, we've got this opportunity, we want 2 students, can you do it all for us? So we will put the call of interest out for them, we'll manage it, we'll pull it all in. We might even put a filter over it and say, look, here you've got 9 applications for you 2. We probably recommend these. Off you go and have a look at it, and then you run your interview panels and go from there. But most of our hosts, because they're long-term hosts, just do that internally and run their own processes anyway. Yeah, we do get students who, for whatever reason, apply to multiple places and they just cannot land a placement, whether it's their GPA or some circumstances. We have students who it's a non-negotiable. They have to get a paid placement because they just can't pay the rent or keep above water without it. So we then get a bit hands-on with some of our hosts and see if there's an opportunity that maybe, they haven't nominated one through the bulletin board that our students see, so they haven't put one up, but there might be one in the background to see if we can manufacture something there. Back in my day, the university itself, because we run an engineering workshop, would actually take students internally if they could not get one. So that's in our fabrication areas, electronics design, mechanical design, etc. And they bring them in and they still are under the supervision of engineers doing engineering work with clients, where the clients might be the academic for this ARC project or whatever it is and things like that. And last but not least, we do run a program, it might be finishing this year, where we bring in and host students internally with industry nominated ideas, where they go into teams like in a consultancy model and they all work on the idea with individual parts in that consultancy model. That idea might go to multiple teams, or teams might get their own unique ideas which have come from industry. And then we work on that and we provide the supervision for the 12 or 20 weeks across the process.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that.
That's all right. It's a good question.
Okay, I'm sorry, everybody. I think we're going to have to stop it there. We've all got other appointments to get to, and it's a good sign of a great presentation that there were so many questions at the end there. We didn't get to them all. So thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate it. Lots of good insights there, and obviously you really top of your game, and it's really good to see. So if you don't mind, a few people have asked for the slides.
Yep.
Would you mind forwarding your slide deck to me, and then I'll send that out to everybody later as a PDF?
Yep,
And I'll
absolutely.
give everyone the opportunity to write you an email, so you might get a few emails a little bit later on today. Thanks. We really appreciate your time, and congratulations on the AAUT win, and well done. And we'll get you back sometime in the future and see how you're progressing, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Yes,
No worries.
Yeah, thanks for generously giving your time, guys. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks again, Stuart, and thanks to everyone who stuck around and who came along today, and for all the positive comments. We really appreciate it. Thank
it's
you so
something
much.
we're really passionate about, so we're happy to share whatever we can share. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. See you next time.